Hello folks, and welcome once again to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. Today I'm in Lytham St Annes. I'm currently sat on the Inner Promenade of Lytham St Annes on a freezing January, and it's rather windy out there. Well, what are you doing there, I hear you all cry? You know, surely you've had your Christmas holidays, Mr H. Don't you ever work? No, the reason I'm here today is I'm on parental leave, and me and Mrs H have brought little Toby James, along with the girls, to Lytham St Annes. And we've just come for a break, really, to get away from everything. Now, the reason I've come in a freezing cold January is you only have so many days after the birth of your child to claim parental leave. Otherwise, you lose it. So, with him being born in December, I've had to take it January, back end of January. Probably February I could have got away with it, but there was no way could I tag it on to my nice sunny summer holidays. Anyway, enough of that. On to today's video. Now, as I said, I'm currently sat on the Inner Promenade here in Lytham St Annes, and I'm sat outside a home that was once owned by the music hall star George Formby, one of the famous sons of Wigan. And we're going to take a little look at the house in a moment. As I say, it's rather windy today, so we're going to have to do it from the car. I'm not going to be able to get inside the house because it is a private residence and I haven't made any prior arrangements, but I can film from on the road, because as anybody out there knows, you can film from a public space. I'm not going to encroach on the privacy too much, because after all, it is somebody's home, and I wouldn't like it done to me. Right, without further ado, I'm going to whip the camera around, I'm going to take a look at George's house, or George's former home, and I'll talk you through the history of it. Well, there it is, Hot Potters. As you can see, it's a magnificent pile, as they used to call them. Now, it's been built out of red Accrington bricks. The reason being, it's right on the seafront, so it needs some tough bricks to be built out of to stand the test of time. It was built in 1932, and it was once owned by Joseph Locke. He was the famous Irish tenor. He was a big singer on the music halls way back in the 40s, but by the 1950s, when he sold this property, his career was waning, along with a lot of the music hall stars. George Formby himself, I think his career was also waning by that point. Now, he only owned the house, Joseph Locke, for about 7 months before he had to put it back on the market. And because George had cash on the hip, or George and Beryl, his wife, the Formbys, they had cash on the hip, they offered him £1,000 less for it. He purchased it for £7,000, and the Formbys purchased it for £6,000. Now, as I said, he moved in there with his wife, Beryl, and they renamed the home, or rather George renamed the home, Beryldean. He would always do that because any home that he lived in, the marital homes, he called them Beryldean for some reason, and this one was no different. Originally, the home was called Sintra in Joseph Locke's day, and it was probably named that back in 1932 when it was built. But George, keeping with tradition, he renamed it Beryldean. Now, his wife died in 1960 in that house at Christmas time. Reports vary. Some say Christmas Day, others say Christmas Eve. Down on findmygrave.com, she's down as dying on the 24th, which of course was Christmas Eve. Now, George, by all accounts, had a bit of a rough marriage. She was a bit of a domineering woman, was Beryl Ingham, the woman he married. And I'm not really going to go into that, to be honest, because people's marriages, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I always say, being married, it's a bit like being in the army. You get 3 square meals a day and you do what you're told. I'm only joking, Mrs H. And I wonder if the ghost of Beryl Ingham still wanders those corridors and that inside there. I'm sure that it doesn't bother the new owners too much. Now, what this home is rather famous for is that after George's death in 1961, he only lasted a couple of weeks, about 10 weeks afterwards, and then he died after his wife Beryl did. All his possessions, and including the home and his car, a Bentley that he had at the time, was auctioned off. A big auction was held here in June 1961, and thousands passed through those gates there to basically have a nosy around the home that George and Beryl had once shared, and put a little bit of a bid in for some of his possessions. Apparently, the type of things that was auctioned off was the house itself, as I say, his Bentley, 15 ukuleles that he had, and unfortunately, soiled underwear. Now, who inherited, the estate, you might ask? Well, George, after the death of his wife, about 7 weeks after, suddenly he announced that he was engaged and he was going to get married to a woman called Pat Howson, who was a school teacher, 20 years his junior. Now, so I've heard of whirlwind romances, hot potters, but 7 weeks after the death of your wife, it's a little bit, it raises an eyebrow, doesn't it? Anyway, as I say, I'm not going to go into that because that was his private life. But that's the reason why there was a big auction held there in 1961, June of 1961, should I say. And it was to basically clear the estate because Formby's mother, she contested the will. She stated that basically, you know, they should have got something. And as with all things, when there's a death like that, it gets pretty nasty. But yeah, that's the home. Now, inside there, there's still some of the Formby era fittings, apparently. And I should imagine they would date back to Joseph Locke's tenure of the place as well. There's some stained glass, which was in the original wooden windows. They had those removed, one of the owners, and placed into new UPVC window frames. There's a bath in there that George still once had a bath in, apparently. Gold, black and green. Not really my type of colours, but there you go. And, of course, like I said, there's the attic there that you can see. That would have once held all of George's theatrical costumes. But the new owners have had it opened up, and I don't blame them, really. It gives a lovely view straight across over to Anglesey, I believe. Right then, that's enough whittering on about the home. You know, it is what it is, really. As I said, it's rather strange to think that all of George's belongings, right down to his underwear, was auctioned off from the backyard of that very house, because it's rather unassuming when you take a look at it. I'm now going to nip across the road. We'll take a closer look at that little blue plaque there that was put up by the Lytham St Annes Civic Society to officially mark that George Formby once lived here. Take a look at the gateways, and then we'll wrap this video up. Okay, folks, so here we are outside the gates that allegedly thousands passed through over those 3 days during the auction back in June 1961. Now, as I said, everything was auctioned off. The house, his car, all his possessions, his ukuleles, etc. And all to settle a will dispute. Now, those wrought iron gates that you can see there, they wouldn't have been there back in George's day. They would have been wooden gates, and with the magic of Editing Suite, we'll be able to take a look at what it would have looked like about now. And as you can see, not much has changed, really. You know, other than the addition of that wooden porch with the balcony that runs along the top of it there. That's not original. We'll now take a look at this little blue plaque here that was put here by the Lytham St Annes Civic Society to prove that this house indeed was inhabited once by George Formby. And then I'm going to get back to the car and wrap this video up because I don't want to outstay my welcome here outside this magnificent house, and I don't want to get on the owner's nerves. Right, folks, well, that was just a quick little look and a bit of brief history of the former home of George Formby, the last one that he lived in before his death in 1961, aged 56 years. Now, this isn't the only star to have lived in Lytham St Annes. A lot of people in television and in film moved here, especially in the 60s, because it was quite an affluent area at the time. I mean, it still is. You know, you take a look at the properties here, and I won't be buying one anytime soon, not on my wage. But they moved here for 2 reasons, really. One, it's far enough away from Blackpool to be quiet, you know, and peaceful. And it's close enough when they was doing those gigs in Blackpool, because that's where a lot of them made their names, you know, in the holiday season on the piers. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately, you know. The stars of the day have moved into Panto, haven't they, type of thing. The recent star up here, I think, that lived up here was Les Dawson. You know, he died in 1993. We might try and take a little look at his former home if we get a chance during this 2 week, which is down there in Lytham. But I'm going to get off now. I'm going to get back to Mrs H and Toby. I'm sorry that I've had to do this video from the car and I've just had to point the camera at the house and witter on, basically. Sometimes it's always nice just walking around and getting different angles, but it's very windy out there and this house is right on the seafront and it is January. So, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you again soon, but until the next time, as always, it is bye-bye for now.
Turned out nice again, hasn't it?